Welcome to Stoughton Community Access Cable TV. My name is Steve Kelley, and this is Community Forum. And today I have the pleasure of having with me Greg Bartlett, who is the Executive Director of the Stoughton Housing Authority, and also Barry Crimmins, who is on the board for the Stoughton Housing Authority.
Correct.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
All right. So I was able to yesterday go down and look at this wonderful new project in which you guys are trying to add some housing stock for the seniors here in Stoughton. So tell me about the project. Greg, what excited you about it? What makes it, I think what you said was this is the shining star of all of the projects that you've attempted to get forward as you've reviewed numerous parcels, and this one is just an incredible opportunity. So tell me why you said that.
Well, let me say thank you to you first and the staff here at SMAC for the opportunity to be here. Project 710 Turnpike Street, we've been, about a year now we've been working on, approximately about a year, to acquire the property, to add additional senior housing to our inventory for the Stoughton Housing Authority. I think it was about 6 months ago we entered into the agreement with the owners. The property was laying idle for approximately 3 years, and nothing's been done with it. So we took the opportunity to speak with the owners, and we come to an agreement and entered into a purchase and sales for the property. However, there are many milestones we have to get through to get to the final end result, which hopefully is put it online, create an additional 20 more units of senior housing at that location, as well as there's a historical part of the property that's been well spoken about, and we're looking forward to turning that back to its original state as well for offices.
Well, I'm going to give you a do-over, Greg, all right? What
Go for it.
is it that excited you about this project? Because you're very straight line, and I think I think that straight line about it, but this is an exciting project for you. So let me give you a do-over, and then we'll go to Barry.
Exciting community project.
So tell me why it's so exciting.
Greg is shy.
What are we're talking about substantial discount on the purchase price. Tell us about the things that really make it.
You've worked on this project for probably more like 3 years.
Well,
yourself, so doing some of that
3
background,
years.
yeah.
Well, we've been looking at it for 3 years.
Right.
Okay, so it was exciting to me because not only the cost we acquired it for, okay,
Yeah.
but the potential that the property there's everything positive about it. In other words, from looking at it from building components, like there's an elevator in place, there's additional costs that probably would have been prohibitive for us to acquire the property. Sprinkler system, elevator, a state-of-the-art fire detection system.
All in place.
So it's all in place. So that probably, if those mechanics of that building, those particular mechanics, we probably wouldn't be sitting here talking about it. So it makes it even more exciting because it's almost ready to go, short of, I mean, they're not minimal capital improvements, but certainly in striking distance. And the building shows, like, historically, a lot of public housing buildings were put into, schools were transformed into public housing buildings years ago. And this speaks for the same thing. That's what's so exciting about it. I mean, it's almost ready to go, so to speak.
And you have a use for it. I mean, you have people on waiting lists.
We do. We have a couple hundred people, a senior list, waiting for housing. They're waiting a minimum of a year after their application's processed. So there's certainly a need for it, and that's the other side of it. That
Right.
Every day we accept applications and we process them for senior housing, and it'll be nice one day when we can look back and say, we're here, we did it, and we're housing people, accordingly.
And it's leadership too on your part.
Oh,
I mean, this
absolutely.
is not just, in perhaps some organizations, they might be satisfied with the existing stock. And you said, we need more, and we need to do it in a way that isn't cost prohibitive. That building, I got a chance to view it, is $3 or $4 million worth of infrastructure that should you have had to build it, would make it so you cannot add it to your stock. You do not have the capacity to add 20 plus units at normal construction cost.
Correct. Actually, we estimated almost $6 million. If we had to start, purchase property and build from the ground up, closer to $6 million. But I will say that it's a huge group effort here. I mean, you need, the board of directors, Barry in particular, has done a huge amount of work on this project, okay? And all the members are in sync. They're excited about the project. You know, we've had numerous meetings, board meetings regarding this, and you know, I can't thank the members for standing behind the whole project, and everybody's in sync. It seems like it's making it a lot easier to move forward, you know.
Great, so now I'm going to give you a chance, Barry.
Okay.
So what makes you so excited about this as a board member who has had substantial experience? How many years? 15 odd years?
We're going on 18 years now. I did a 16-year stint initially.
Yep.
Got on the board way back when actually Roberta DeAndre was on the Stoughton Housing Authority, got elected to the Board of Selectmen. That created a vacancy, and that's when I first got on, and then was elected to 3 5-year terms. And then I decided to do go in a little different direction, did 1 5-year term on the Stoughton Redevelopment Authority.
Yep.
And got off of that, and then a vacancy came up on the Housing Authority, and Greg and I spoke, and I think I mentioned this to you yesterday, and it sort of segues back to your question, is I said, you know, I'd be interested in getting back on the board if I felt that we could be more active and more productive in producing new housing. Because the one frustration that I experienced in my first 16 years on the Housing Authority is early on when I got on board, we built the Silver House, which is our congregate housing on Pleasant Street across from 4 Capon Street.
Right.
But other than that, because of budget restraints on the state side, our budgets are limited to what's called modernization money. We're able to maintain our existing stock of housing, but the state was not funding any money for new construction.
Okay.
So when I spoke to Greg about getting back on the board, he said to me, I might have just the thing for you that might entice you to get back on. Because as I said, and Greg is being shy, he's been working on this project for quite a while. He's been chasing the owners and chasing the broker. And this property, as Greg mentioned, had been on the market for some time. There have been other efforts at possible rezoning. There had been some neighborhood resistance to some of the other ideas that were proposed for the building. One was going to be an adult school that was going to have 3 sessions, morning, afternoon, and evening, with that constant traffic flow. And so certainly that was met with some resistance. But I said to him, look, if you're serious about this project, I'll get on board with you. And that was a large impetus to me getting back on, because once again, I applied for a vacancy, and then a year ago got elected to another 5-year term. And as Greg mentioned, you know, it wasn't just me, all 5 of the members of the Stoughton Housing Authority, along with Greg, we're very enthusiastic about this for largely the same reason. It's frustrating as a member every month as one of the items on our agenda is to go through our waiting list. And you see the dates that these folks have applied. And you know, what we have is what's called a control number. You don't know who the applicant is, but you see a control number and you see the date of the application. And you see, you know, it's taken too long to house these people.
Right.
And so the real excitement, I think, for both of us and the other members of the Housing Authority is, look, because of the ability to acquire this property basically at a discounted price, because of the availability of funding through the Community Preservation Act, that made this project feasible. and allowed us to accomplish one of our primary objectives, which is adding additional elderly housing for our seniors. And it's not going to solve our wait list problem. You know, it's 20 to 22 units, because again, we hope to get some additional units at Capon Street by virtue of the offices moving up there.
Right.
But it's going to help, and it's going to help in a way that would not otherwise be possible. So it's something that I know Greg and I and the other members of the Housing Authority are very excited about. It has received fantastic support at every step along the way, at every board that we have had to appear before, you know, starting with the Community Preservation Committee, of which, you know, I was appointed as the Housing Authority's representative to that. Unanimous support by the Community Preservation Committee. Then as part of the town meeting process, which I'm sure we can touch on, we've had to appear before the Finance Committee, we've had to appear before the Planning Board, we've had to appear before the Municipal Regulations Committee, and all of them, without exception, have given us great feedback, great response, and great support, and it's been encouraging. It's been encouraging. It is made our job a little bit easier in the sense we don't feel like we're trying to force something upon people, whether the neighbors or the town or town meeting, because we think it's something that the indications that we have received have all been positive, and I think it's going to continue right through town meeting.
Well, I think what re-energizes too is we've already had one open house there. We did invite Precinct 2 and all the abutters, and I think about 44 people showed up on a snowy morning.
Yep.
In January. So when we left there, we had a little questionnaire, you know, do you support this project? And I can tell you 38 out of 40 or 42 were all positive. Wow. Written in positive comments, and that was encouraging.
And I think the others weren't that they were negative, they had questions.
Well, actually, two of the questions, by the time they had actually had left the open house, and the next time I spoke to them, there was nothing negative about it anymore. It was all positive. They totally supported it.
Wow,
and that was encouraging to us, because you know, you have abutters and, you know, everybody up in that neighborhood wondering what's going in here. Something's going to go in there eventually, and that made it really, really promising at that point.
So it seems to me you solve a couple of problems for that property. Number one, the vacancy and the vandalism that is potentially to happen there if it stays vacant. And number two, whatever use you choose sort of prevents a more egregious use from coming in there.
Exactly.
So it seems to me like a good fit, what you've been doing. Barry alluded to sort of an overall plan that relates to the 4 Capon. So perhaps you can tell me a little bit about that.
To put 2 additional units online. When several years ago, our office was not, at 4 Capon Street, was not handicap accessible. So we had the option of making the lower level handicap accessible, or taking over 2 apartments and converting those into our administrative offices, which we did. However, we took back 2 apartments. So now with this opportunity, we'll put 20 units online at 710 Turnpike Street, and the historical part of the building, we'll renovate that so we can move our offices back up there, or in there, I should say, and create 2 more apartments at Capon Street, put those back online. And matter of fact, in the office, when I renovated them myself, the tub is still in place, the bathrooms are still in place. We used them, left them that way with the anticipation of hopefully someday, you know, moving out of there and relocating, and here we are. So hopefully that works for us as well. We'll put 2 more units online at Capon Street. Yeah, and the historical side is perfect for us, you know, for offices, administrative offices. There's access, handicap accessible, the whole building's accessible.
Right. Well, I want to come back to the historical piece, and then I'm going to also ask Barry in a bit to talk about the process and some of the work that you've done to create zoning and things like that. But before I do, maybe you could speak to the audience about the need and how important that is to answer the need for the community for senior housing. Like why as a community should we be investing in this? Why, you know, what's the need?
Well, statistically, we look at the wait list, and there's a couple hundred people on the list waiting for housing. Every day, we're sending out applications and processing applications for senior housing, okay? So there's certainly that part of it is a need for it, but from a community aspect, as far as related to the property, to have it sitting there vacant and sitting there with no use whatsoever, something's going to be going in there. So to take our inventory and increase it, and then bring the residents of Stoughton in, who there's so many empty nesters out there looking for housing. People looking for, eventually, as the economy gets better, everything's going to change again. You're going to see a big influx of additional residents looking for housing. And although like Barry said, it's a small piece. It's only 20 units. Well, 22 we're through, but the list keeps growing. So, you know, I don't know if it depends. You know, how quick we can get this done. That's the whole thing. Yeah.
Well, one of the keys for myself as a taxpayer in town that I think just makes me feel warm and fuzzy about this about your agency, and I'd like you to share it with the audience. You're a self-sustaining agency, and that is incredible. I mean, it's just that you guys are going to take in enough rent to pay your bills.
Well, if you live and work in Massachusetts, you have a vested interest in all 244 housing authorities. Okay, our budgets come through the Commonwealth of Mass, through the State House, and they trickle down to the authorities. Now, we're one of four states, Massachusetts, that has subsidized state housing. That's Jersey, Connecticut, and Hawaii. That's remarkable. Subsidized state housing. The rest is most of it's federal. Stoughton Housing Authority offers just about every program in public housing, with the exception of a couple. There's veterans housing, congregate housing, senior housing, family housing, MRVP, Section 8. It's an asset to the town. I mean, to be able to be a resident, and if you're a resident in Stoughton, you apply, you have a preference when you apply that you're a Stoughton resident. But it's always difficult managing the money for capital improvements and trying to make that work. I mean, the money comes very slow for improvements, you know. So we basically, I mean, our average rents are about $270 per month. We pay utilities and senior housing. I mean, some of the property we have, Rose Forte is, I mean, we spend $14,000, $15,000 a month on heat bills in the winter. You know, try to juggle that around a little bit, those funds. Same with La Civitas Court.
Right, but you do not operate at a deficit.
We do not operate at, many housing authorities are subsidized by the Commonwealth. We always sign an agreement with the Commonwealth if we need subsidy. But I can tell you we've never been subsidized. I'm not sure about when you were on the board before. But under this administration or prior to that, we've never been subsidized. In other words, we are operating that agency on our rents specifically. Only. That's it. So it's a hats off to the entire organization that we can still do it. How long we can do it for, who knows, with the cost of utilities and retirement and insurance. But we'll keep trying, you know. But it's a credit. We're actually number 12 out of 244 housing authorities in the Commonwealth. We're rated number 12 in the Commonwealth out of 244 agencies. And we're also a high performer from federal standards, from HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development.
So let me be tough on you. What's it going to take to get to number one?
Well, if we stay intact on the board and the staff, we have a tremendous staff. The maintenance staff is tremendous. The administrative staff, just the same. It's a great group, very energized, very talented. I'm sure we'll move up the ladder. I'm sure.
I was throwing you a softball. I was waiting for you to say 22 units. So
I didn't pick up on that, but
we need to reduce our wait list, Steve. And this is going to go a long way towards doing that and move us up that ladder. But again, Greg is being shy again. You know, just a little bit of history. In my first term, if you will,
You've been around longer than I have.
The Housing Authority. We had a little bit of turnover. When I first got on the Housing Authority, Charlie Ahern, many Stoughton residents will remember Charlie, former selectman and executive director of the Housing Authority when I got on the board. But after he left, we had a little bit of turnover on the Housing Authority. And then I think it was in my first or second term when Greg was hired. And he started out on the maintenance staff. and then became maintenance foreman. And when the then director was stepping down, we advertised, we interviewed, and Greg applied for the position. And I remember saying to my colleagues on the board at that time, I said, who knows this authority? At that point, he was the maintenance foreman, and he was working hand in hand as sort of an assistant director, at least in reality, if not in name, with our then executive director. And I remember saying to my colleagues, who knows this authority better than Greg? You know, he may not have the experience at that time as a director, but he knew the authority, he knew the properties, and he knew our tenants better than anyone. So I think, to give him a little plug, we were fortunate that he was available. We were fortunate that he was interested. He's really brought the authority forward. Runs a great administrative office, runs a great maintenance staff because he was hands-on when he was first hired. So he's been in the field. And again, I think the Stoughton Housing Authority is a credit to the town of Stoughton. It is a, not to get poetic, but it is sort of a jewel for the community, because we fulfill a need in the town. Our residents are mostly Stoughton residents. What I mean by that is they were Stoughton residents when they applied for and got housing. I don't know what the percentages are, but most of our tenants, our residents, were living in the town when they applied for Stoughton Housing Authority for housing. And I think I mentioned to you yesterday, what happens oftentimes is you may have a husband and wife, and let's say the husband passes away, and now the wife is living in the home by herself. Perhaps it's difficult to maintain the property financially and otherwise, maybe living on Social Security. Because keep in mind, our tenants have to meet certain income guidelines. Not anyone can go into our properties. When you apply, there are income guidelines. You cannot exceed a certain income based on the size of your household. And that's true of both our elderly projects as well as our family projects. So depending on whether it's a one-person household, two-person household, et cetera, there are income guidelines.
Yeah, one person is approximately $45,000, up to four, which is about $65,000. And you have to be 60 or older, non-elderly disabled, be 60 or under, and then there's family housing. But to speak what Barry was talking about regarding our position as an authority is we are required also to have audits, state audits and federal audits, which we've, the last 7, 8, 10 years, all of our audits are zero findings, which that type of activity helps you when you're trying to pursue or acquire a property because you are rated. So you don't want to be on the bottom of the list as a housing authority.
Right.
Okay. They're looking at your management rating.
Right.
And if it's not very good, all right, and you're not a high performer, they're not going to be so quick to work with you on these potential projects such as 710.
Yeah, why would we
when
give you
you're out
more
for
headaches?
funding, sure.
Yeah,
They want to make sure you're maintaining your assets now as opposed to, take on another project when you don't have the manager, you don't have the staff, you don't have the board on your side.
Right.
So all that plays into it, which puts you in a much better place when it comes to seeking funding or support, for that matter, from any one of our quasi agencies, Department of Housing Community Development or Department of Housing Urban Development, Mass Housing Partnership. So all that plays into it, and you want to be shining at that point. You don't want to be fighting that fight, and your management's not, this isn't right, that's not right. Another big thing is vacancies. You looked at many towns can't keep up with the vacancies. You see it every month at board meeting. We have one vacancy, two.
Yeah, you got to turn them quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
And the maintenance staff is phenomenal. They just turn them right over.
Yep.
And we've always held that and maintained that. So that's another big thing that they look at. Your funding agencies look at that. You don't want 15 or 20 units offline. That's your only income.
Right. No, in order for you to remain self-sustaining, that turnover, just like in my own business, that turnover is quick.
Right.
That we
And
can't
that's
have
what
them
plays
offline.
into audits and the independent audits, the state audits. They review and look at test files and look at all of that. So yeah, we have a very, very strong team. I'd say it's...
when there is a vacancy, the maintenance staff goes in, repaints the apartment, gets it ready for the next person, because as you said, we want to turn those over as quickly as possible. We don't want those offline. As You know, that's another person who's on a waiting list, that's waiting for housing. That's loss of income to the housing authority. So just the quicker we can refit that apartment, so to speak, and get the next tenant in there, the better it is for everybody.
We own, manage, and maintain 266 units of housing in Stoughton. The residents should know that. We have, in a perfect world, a maintenance staff of 5 men, full-time men. And we do an average of 50 to 60 vacancies a year, which doesn't sound like much, but go back to the 266 units. That's 266 fridges, flushes, sinks, doors, and there's only 5 men. And that's in between shoveling and you know, maintaining landscape and lawns. And I mean, it's just incredible the amount of work that they do. And we maintain that vacancy just about at 0 all the time. We turn them right over. So it's,
That's great.
yeah.
I want to switch gears a little with you, Barry.
Okay.
You have made this a mission. And speak to that a little bit about
18
how
years.
it enriches your life that you've made this a mission.
Well, I mean, just, I guess, even getting back on the Housing Authority, originally getting on the Housing Authority. I mean, the town of Stoughton has been good to me and my family. And being on the Housing Authority is one small way that I can sort of give back to the community, as they say. But as I mentioned, in being on the Housing Authority, what I've seen, you know, that we've seen the good things that Greg is alluding to, but to me the downside was that wait list. And so Greg and I and the other members of the board have really, you know, looked at as our job, if you will, as members of the Housing Authority, how can we get additional units of housing? Greg, once again, you know, like you're saying, being shy, but you know, in the last few years, even before this project became available, you know, he looked at some other potential buildings in the downtown area. There had been some comments made even in the course of this project, hey, we'd like to see the Stoughton Housing Authority do something downtown. Well, first of all, keep in mind our project at 4 Capon Street really is downtown.
Pretty much.
And that's, you know, that's a converted factory building that was done. And we'd love to have a downtown presence if such became available, and that's part of how the zoning amendment that we have prepared, the reason why it was drafted the way it was. Our federal project on Britton Ave, which is referred to as Stoughton Memorial Village, is again a federally funded project, and Greg had looked at the possibility of seeing if we could add to that. Because again, where it's federally funded, there could be potentially some other funding sources, but once again, funding became an issue. So we've looked at these things, and so my passion and my interest really came about as, again, through Greg's efforts, first of all, identifying this property in terms of its availability, identifying it in terms of its functional utility, you know, a converted school, making it into apartments. And then thirdly, the availability of funding through the Community Preservation Act. I think I said to you yesterday, it was sort of the positive perfect storm, the intersection of those 3 factors all coming in. Without the community preservation funding availability, we couldn't do this project. It just would not be feasible, would not be financially feasible.
The capital's not available.
Right, exactly.
Even at the low rate that you're purchasing the building, which is great.
Right. So for all those reasons and for reasons we've touched on, it made this project feasible, and it's a project I think that the town is going to be very proud of. It's preserving one of the historic buildings in the town, the Swan's Tavern, that was built in the early 1800s. In addition to, again, retrofitting the former Solomon Schechter Day School into apartments for our senior citizens. So it's something I'll feel that if I get off the Housing Authority and we have brought this online, I personally will feel as though we've accomplished something.
And I know, based on the legislation, if you that you've put forward, there's a lot of hours goes into scoping out the work and putting the language in that would allow it to properly fit in the CPA funds, properly fit with the zoning. So I'll ask you about that process in a minute.
Okay.
Before I do, I wanted to give a shout out to your fellow members. And between the two of you, I'm sure you'll, who are the other 4 members of that board?
So Kevin Wilder who's been on the board for a long time, is our chairman. Arthur Slate, who's also been on the board for a long time, is another member. Donald Brady is a member, and Rich Jasmine, who works for the DPW and is very active in Stoughton Youth Baseball, is the other member, along with myself.
Don Brady is the state appointee. The governor appoints for a 5-year term one member, and I think Arthur served as
when he
as a
first
state
got on, I think,
appointee,
right.
and then it's Don Brady now.
Right. So we have 4 elected members who are elected by the residents of town and, for a 5-year term, as Greg said, and then 1 state appointee appointed by the governor's office through DHCD, and again, that's Donald Brady.
And for those who don't know, that's a volunteer commitment with a small stipend for expenses, right? So there's
Correct.
no.
Well,
Correct, that's correct.
Yeah,
yes.
there's no.
we don't get paid.
Yeah, we don't
We
get
don't get
paid.
paid.
We
No,
don't
we
get
don't
paid.
get paid.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that and
exactly.
it's important that
Exactly.
you're volunteering for the community, trying to get something really important, addressing the need for senior housing for people that do not have the income to support themselves and yet can support living in a group home with some group support from the kind of administration that you have.
True. We typically have 2 board meetings a month. However, that's for regular general business, like usually the first Tuesday of every month. But when you bring a project like this forward, it changes the whole dynamics of meetings. I mean, I can tell you that I don't have to tell Barry how much time he has into this, right? As well as the other members, but in particular Barry with the zoning and obviously his legal background and all has been a tremendous help. But it adds another layer of labor into it, if you will, when now you're not meeting twice a month, you're meeting almost every week, and they have to be willing to do it.
Right.
So it's not just, let's go find this property. We've looked at a lot of property in Stoughton, and this by far is the most positive one that we've looked at as a team.
The most positive attributes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, right across the board.
Yep.
And as Barry alluded to, a tremendous amount of support for this project. So when you bring that into it, it's they're coming out again, volunteering, a couple more nights a month, or we met one time I think twice or 3 times in 1 week, let alone all the meetings at town hall, and like I said, the FinCom and the selectmen, and so they're willing to do it, and they do a great job.
So a big shout out of thank you to those people
Absolutely.
on the board who are
Absolutely.
consistently and hopefully going to be consistently working toward something that they can be proud of. At the time they come off or stay on, they're going to say, "I got that done," and they deserve a lot of credit, including yourself.
But what's been nice about it, Steve, that I alluded to earlier, is the positive response we've received from all of the other boards, which are also obviously volunteer boards as well, as you know. You serve on a couple yourself, and they have all been enthusiastically behind this project all along the way. So that's been very encouraging because, as I said, we don't feel as though we're bringing in something that has resistance or opposition to it. It's really been a win-win situation. I did just want to touch on one thing. It may have been semantics. You mentioned group home. It's really not a group home.
Okay.
These apartments are independent apartments. Our residents are very independent. For instance, as compared to the Silver House that I mentioned on Pleasant Street, which is our congregate housing, which has sort of a smaller apartment and more of a community facility set up to it. These apartments and these residents are independent. Some drive, some don't. But they're living independently. They're out in the community. They may have help coming in. They may have Meals on Wheels coming in from the Council on Aging, or they may have a visiting nurse coming in from the Stoughton V&A, something like that. But it's independent living.
Excellent.
And you were there yesterday. You saw the beautiful community room.
Yes.
All of our developments have community rooms for our residents to go in and whether it be arts and crafts or some type of a social gathering.
Poker, maybe?
Sure, why not?
Poker and bingo and things like that?
Yeah. But you saw it. There's another positive side of that property at 710 Turnpike, that you walk in and there's this beautiful community room built for us already.
Yeah.
Plays into the whole big picture of things, you know?
Yeah, and there are two things that I wanted to get to, and perhaps we'll do the historical piece first, and then I'd like you to walk us, Barry, after that, through the process of CPA zoning and how you sort of engineered that.
Right, sure.
So, but what you've talked about is the historical piece of the Swan Tavern. There's a lot of beautiful architecture there, the moldings that make turns that today are so costly as to be not viable, but you can actually take those and enhance them, bring them out. You spoke about being able to put caps over some of the pipes to make it look visually more pleasing, and try to restore that to its old style. And you have how many fireplaces there?
7.
7 fireplaces
And as a
that you could
finished
do?
carpenter, it's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
So I can enjoy all the detail in each room. That there are some issues up there with the sprinkler system that they kind of ran it everywhere throughout the historical side of the building, but we'll get creative and lose that somewhere in there.
Good.
It's one of the reasons, Steve, if I may, one of the reasons that early on, when we talked about this as a board, we wanted to conduct the open houses, that the one that we've already had in January that we touched on, the one we're having this coming Saturday, April 26th, that we felt that unless people can get inside this property and see it from the inside, they're really not going to appreciate the potential for what can be done there. On both sides, on both the school to be converted to the apartments, but as well as the Swan's Tavern piece to be converted to offices for the Housing Authority, and the possibility for additional municipal offices that could be located up there, because there's more space up there than we need for just the Housing Authority offices. So there's the potential for some partnering with the town if they wanted to utilize a portion of the Council on Aging, some department in the town to go up there. But we really felt it was important for folks to be able to see the inside and not be limited to just driving by and seeing the building and say, oh yeah, there's 710 Turnpike Street, or there's Swan's Tavern. You really need to see the inside, to see how the school portion is set up with the community room, like Greg mentioned, the Swan's Tavern piece, the potential. I can't wait to see what that's going to look like when it's all. It's going to be a process. It's going to be, it's not going to be something we're going to complete in a year. But when that's done, that's going to be beautiful.
I'm sure you'd feel the same way. Yesterday we talked about if we couldn't get access to the building, we'd walk outside and walk around. But now that you've seen it,
Yes.
it's a whole different picture. As Barry alluded to, once you walk through there, and that's as Barry said. That's why we really need to get people into the building and walk them through it, and take groups of 10 or 15 at a time and explain to them exactly what we're doing. So there's a clear, transparent picture of what we're doing. You
And you're going to do that tomorrow? Not tomorrow, Saturday?
Saturday, April 26th, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. There's open invitation
Absolutely.
to all of the
Anyone,
residents of
any
town.
taxpayers, come on down.
Right, we sent a mailing out to all of the town meeting members, as well as to several of the boards in town, Board of Selectmen, Community Preservation, many of whom came to the open house in January, but we did not have as broad an invitation list at that time as we're doing here, but it's not limited to just the folks who have received the written invitation. We sent that out primarily to the town meeting members. But as I said, anyone in the community is welcome to come out this Saturday, April 26th, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. But if folks can't make it, they can call Greg at the Housing Authority offices, and we can arrange to bring people up to the property if they can't make it on Saturday.
Strongly encourage residents that are available, take a little time out of your day on Saturday and come up.
Yeah, and as a builder and a
Yes.
developer myself, seeing the quality, like the doors that you're going to be able to use, all the steel, the knockdowns we call
talked
them.
about that,
And
yeah.
that, they're $1,100, $1,200 each, and you've got 40 of them in there, so.
If you
And-
spend a little
yeah.
more time in there as a developer contractor, you'd see there's a tremendous amount of mechanical systems in there that are right in place for us.
Yep.
As
Elevators.
No.
Elevate, yeah,
No.
No, it's
That-
95, I would say probably 90% of it is accessible. So there's a little bit on the second floor of the Swan Tavern that isn't,
Right.
but everything else was.
And we're discussing that now with the architect, how we can tie the buildings together to have access to the second floor, which
We had Tom McGrath, the building inspector for the town, out to the property along with his assistant.
Right.
So we wanted to very early on identify any issues that there may be, either that we were aware of, or perhaps that we weren't aware of, that we wanted to make sure we knew going in if there were gonna be any problems in that regard.
And we looked out back, and it looked like there was enough room for some garden
Absolutely.
plots, which I
Yeah.
thought would
plenty
be,
of parking.
Yeah,
and plenty of parking, 40 spaces.
40 spaces.
And that should help out as well. So,
absolutely, absolutely.
So let's switch now and put you in the driver's seat of this,
Okay.
Barry. Not only for people that are interested from the town's perspective of funding, but
Yeah.
say a similar project
Sure.
were to come up. You've now set a roadmap.
Right.
What was that like? What are the steps that are going to take this from a privately owned property to a joint venture for publicly owned with the Stoughton Housing Authority through the Community Preservation Act funding, the zoning approvals that are needed, and I think there's a ZBA
Right,
case
exactly, yep.
that's related,
Yes.
and then if all of these things,
Right.
the complexity of this is this folds together nicely,
Yeah.
you'll end up with a project that you can fund for substantially, I would guess, some 30% or 70% savings to the
Yeah,
public
yeah.
over doing this as a new project. So
Absolutely.
I'm guessing it's in that range, but,
You're not
without
far off.
verifying
Yeah.
it. So walk us through, what is
Right.
that like? How did you do it?
Right, so even, again, going back, after Greg had identified the availability and the fit of the property for our needs, he had several discussions with the owner's representative, and, we were seeing if, could we have a meeting of the minds in terms of price and otherwise to make this a reality. So, and that was a process, but eventually, as Greg alluded to before, we entered into a purchase and sales agreement with the owners of the property, which we have done, and it has several contingencies to it. And of course, one of the contingencies is financing. And again, as part of that process, we said the only way we can make this happen is because of the availability of the Community Preservation Act funding. So even before I got appointed as the Housing Authority's representative to the Community Preservation Committee, it was brought to my attention that the committee, the Community Preservation Committee, was looking to do more in the housing area. They've done projects such as Glen Echo, dealing with open space. There's a project on this year's warrant that John Dennison from the Recreation Department has identified for the Pierce Street Playground to rebuild that playground, so recreation, open space, historic preservation, and then the fourth component of the Community Preservation Act is housing, community housing. And several of the members of the committee said, we've done a few things, and in fact, the Housing Authority had benefited from a couple of small projects
yes.
that we were very grateful for. But they said, would like to see you folks do more. And we said, that was music to our ears. So we said, yeah, so these were sort of working on parallel tracks. We were pursuing the property with the owners, and we were beginning a dialogue with the Community Preservation Committee.
Right.
And so once the purchase and sales agreement was entered into, our first step was to submit an article, a preliminary article, to the Community Preservation Committee for funding. And because of the Swan's Tavern piece, there are actually two separate and distinct components to the community preservation funding of this project. The housing component, if you will, is the former Solomon Schechter Day School, the newer section that has the classrooms that we envision converting into elderly apartments. Then Swan's Tavern, because of its historic background, is eligible for the historic preservation component of the CPA, the Community Preservation Act. So we submitted two separate funding articles to the Community Preservation Committee, one for housing and the other for historic preservation. All part of one project. The buildings are connected, as you saw. But for purposes of the Community Preservation Act, they come under two different funding components.
Right.
Two different articles that.
Two different articles.
Sure,
So,
yeah.
so on the warrant for this year's time, so let me even back up. So we presented to the Community Preservation Committee, and we had at least three meetings with them to come to a final article that they then voted unanimously to support and to recommend to town meeting for approval. Well, that was the approval of the Community Preservation Committee. We then had to submit those articles as well as zoning amendment articles to the Board of Selectmen to be inserted into the warrant for the town meeting.
So why did the Board of Selectmen have to be part of that?
So to get an article on the warrant for the town meeting, there are two ways an article can get onto the warrant. One is what's referred to as a petition article. I can prepare a petition and go out and get the signatures of residents of the town. And as long as I get sufficient signatures, I can submit that article and it will be placed on the warrant. However, there's a December 31st deadline for petition articles. We were still in negotiations with the property owner during this time period. It carried over into the first of the year. So it wasn't until sometime after the first of the year that we finally had a signed purchase and sales agreement. It was a little bit later than that now that I think of it. So the route that we had to take was the warrant remains, under our town charter, the warrant remains open to the Board of Selectmen for them to insert articles until the first Tuesday in February. So we were in front of the selectmen on the first Tuesday in February.
Oh, they had to submit it that day.
On February 4th.
Oh,
well, we had submitted them beforehand, but we were in front of them at their meeting on February 4th, the first Tuesday in February, requesting that they insert the articles into the warrant for the town meeting. Had the selectmen said no, then they wouldn't have gone on the warrant. Okay, so
couldn't have been authorized.
Right. So that's why I say it's really been a true partnership of a lot of town boards. We needed the support of the Community Preservation Committee to approve the funding. This is a large project.
No, it's wonderful.
Financially, it's a large commitment, and not one that we certainly take lightly.
Well, it's a $3.5 million project when we're through.
Yeah, and so then we also needed, again, the Board of Selectmen to approve the articles, to just get them onto the warrant so that town meeting could approve them. And what is town meeting approving? Town meeting, ultimately, when the Community Preservation Committee makes a recommendation for funding, which is really what their function is, town meeting still has to approve that recommendation. So the two articles, again, for housing and for historic preservation for Swan's Tavern, will be on the warrant for the town meeting starting on Monday, May 5th. We also had to submit an article for a zoning amendment because under our current zoning bylaw, elderly housing is not permitted in the particular zoning district that the property is located in. The property, for those that may not be familiar with Swan's Tavern, is at the corner of Turnpike and Central Street, heading up towards Avon, towards the Christmas tree shop. So it's right on that corner there. And that's in a residential district. And so in order to allow us, there's a provision in our zoning bylaw already where we can have elderly housing in certain zoning districts. One is referred to as RM, which is residential multifamily. Then there's a zoning district RU, which is residential urban, more of the downtown area. And then there's an RC district, you get a little bit further out from the downtown area. In the RU and the RC district, such housing as we're proposing is currently allowed, but it's allowed by special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So what our article proposes is this property is located in the RB district, residential B. And so it's to allow such housing in the RB zone, but again, by special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So we go to town meeting. Hopefully we get the support that we're expecting at town meeting for both the funding from the Community Preservation Act as well as a zoning amendment.
Change, yes.
Right. So assuming we get that approved, both require a 2/3 vote of town meeting.
Right.
But assuming we get that approval, and once town meeting is over, we then still have to submit an application to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit to allow the housing. So then the zoning board we'll have to also approve the specific special permit that will allow us to then have elderly housing at this location.
Well, I'm awfully glad you guys, decided to come on to the show because it gives you an opportunity. It's rather complex to kind of see how the puzzle pieces fit.
Absolutely.
And this gives you an opportunity to lay it out. You could even, hopefully people will get the message and take some time on the show to kind of capture all of this, and then that'll reduce the sort of the pathway, the friction in the pathway.
We just consolidated 7 months into an hour.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's hard to digest all that at once. But,
So let me cut you guys off for a minute. I'm going to read the credits.
Okay.
And there's probably one or two things that you really wish you could have said. Now's your opportunity to think of that. So let me have Roy roll the credits, and then we'll come back to you for a minute
Great.
each, probably.
Thanks, Steve.
All right. So the Stoughton Housing Authority, 4 Capon Street in Stoughton, 781-344-6599. And you can email Greg at sha.dir@verizon.net. He'll never return a call, but email him anyways.
Thanks, Dave.
He always returns my calls.
He's always good. I'm having some fun. Okay, and NAMI Walks, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Saturday, May 10th at 2014. The DCRs, and I think it's Artissimo Park, I don't know quite, 1255 Soldiers Field Road in Brighton. And that walk is to raise awareness about mental illness and to stop the stigma about mental illness. www.namiwalks.org/Massachusetts. The contact there is Karen Gromas, 617-580-8541. The crew would like to thank Maxie's Delicatessen, 117 Sharon Street in Stoughton, for all of their support for the Stoughton Media Access Cable here, 781-341-1662. We also have the American Cancer Society is looking for volunteers to drive cancer patients to and from treatments, 1-800-ACS-6662, www.cancer.org. The Ilsa Food Pantry and St. Anthony's Free Market, 2 Park Avenue in Stoughton. For more information, call Christine Gallagher, 781-341-0611 or 781-341-0549. And if you call Christine, I can tell you you'll meet with a warm heart. So Meals on Wheels, ask for Jessica, 781-344-8882, extension 2. And the Stoughton Penny Saver. Their slogan is, "Our business is advertising your business," and they do a heck of a good job at that. So 27 Rose Glen Street in Stoughton, 781-344-4833. They're a great supporter of SMAC, and I believe SMAC is a wonderful addition to Stoughton. It's one of the jewels, as Barry said, that Stoughton has going for it. The International Forum Show, interviewing guests with local roots throughout the world via Skype. We run those shows on Sunday at 8:30 p.m., Monday at 11 p.m., Wednesday 9 a.m., Thursday 9:30, Saturday 12 noon, and that's on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 28. And Foley's Backstreet 5K, the 2nd annual 5K road race to benefit the Mass Hospital School, Sunday, May 4th. Start and finish at the Mass Hospital School, 3 Randolph Street, Canton. For more information, call 781-297-0100. Go out and have some fun, do a little road race, get your body in shape, and see if you can help the people at the Mass Hospital School. And the Stoughton Farmers Market, a wonderful opportunity for the community to get together. This year, it will be held at the First Parish Universalist Church, 790 Washington Street, right in Stoughton Center. Saturdays in June through October, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Starting June 7th, rain or shine. It's a nonprofit, volunteer-run market. We try to bring you fresh produce. We try to bring you some wonderful entertainment, get to meet the folks in your neighborhood, a couple of nice bakeries as well. So come on down, buy some good stuff right here from local people and support the community. And the Community Forum, our show times, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 6 p.m. At 6 p.m., so it's a wonderful time. You can kind of digest your food and watch one of these shows and hear from the guests who are supporting Stoughton, such as the guests today, Greg and Barry. So Monday at 8 p.m., Tuesday at 5 p.m., Comcast Channel 9, Verizon Channel 28. Comments and suggestions, contact us. communityforum1@yahoo.com. We are so eager to hear your feedback. We really want to hear, what do you think makes sense? How are we doing? What kind of shows do you want to have? Or if you have a show that you'd like to put on, call Roy, call us here at Stoughton Media Access Cable, and we'll do the best we can to support that. Community Forum showtimes in Easton, Monday at 9 p.m., Tuesday at 8 a.m., Wednesday 3 p.m., Saturday at 10 a.m., and that's Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 22. Same for the comments and suggestions. I don't want to let a minute go by without thanking Leo McGowan, Roy Cohen, Gina, I think, is out back as well. I've got Dave Young, we've got Mike, we've got everybody helping out in the course of running this wonderful studio. So thanks to those guys. Now we're back with our guests, Greg Bartlett and Barry Crimmins. What did we forget to tell the audience, Greg?
I'm going to circle back with a special thanks regarding this acquisition of 710 Turnpike Street, a positive community project for the entire town. We talked before about, I'd like to thank everyone that attended the last open house, everyone that came by that day. And a special thanks to Barry and my board of directors and the entire staff. It's been a very exciting, positive project since then. I can't think anything negative about it. Otherwise, we'd talk about that, but I just can't take into anything and say there's nothing negative about it.
Yeah.
So, once again, the open house is this Saturday from 11 to 1. If you need transportation, feel free to call the authority. You have the number up there. And if you miss the open house and you still wish to get into the property and look at it, I'll be available moving forward as we get to town meeting. And hopefully we ask everybody for their support, and I think we'll be okay. You know, I think it'll come to fruition.
Wonderful. And Barry, what do you think we got to really?
Well, just like to reiterate our thanks to you and Roy and the crew, both for having us on, for accommodating a little scheduling conflict that we had as well. Want to urge all of the residents of the town who can make it out to the open house this Saturday, April 26th, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. To please come out to the property, take a tour, ask questions, see what it is that we're hoping to bring to the community. As Greg said, if you can't make it to the open house, we can make tours available for folks that can't make it. And I would simply urge my other town meeting members, which I am one of 168 town meeting members, for the annual town meeting that's starting on Monday, May 5th, to please support this project. The two articles are the Community Preservation Act funding articles are in Article 33. It's Articles 33B and C. And our zoning amendment is Article 49. And I would ask all of the town meeting members to please support the approval of those articles. And once again, want to thank you, Steve, for all your help with this as well. It's been a great process. It's been encouraging. As a lifelong resident of the town, to see the type of support, to see the type of cooperative effort that this project has really brought together.
I think it even tends to highlight what the master plan is starting to evolve into, the kind of direction that the master plan can give the community to say that we want to start taking care of the potential needs for seniors, the kind of highlighting of that, and mix that in with just the good work that the Stoughton Housing Authority does already. And I think it's a recipe for future trends.
Well,
and
we won't stop with this project. We'll continue to move forward. Believe
Okay.
me, we just won't stop here. We will continue to take this mission and carry it through. As you speak about the downtown and the development, we'll be in search of it.
Excellent. All right, so I want to thank the audience for watching. I want to thank Leo McGowan for filming and Roy for producing. So hope you have a great day.